Life is like this, meaning this is gonna happen regardless, whether you like it or not. So how am I gonna perceive this problem, this obstacle, this setback in a way that will maybe launch me further, not set me more behind? You're just going downhill. It's an upward battle. Like you're not gonna make it if you keep doing that. Because in order to get somewhere different, you gotta think differently. The same thing that's gotten you here is not going to get you to the next level. And I will always say that. Truth is, one thing that's always going to happen in life is that things are always going to change. And we're all working on evolving. We're all working on becoming this higher version of ourselves, right? But we can't deny that a lot of times we do fall back in our path. And healing isn't linear. And evolving isn't linear. And jumping from the current version of you to the highest version of you is not a linear process. A lot of people explain it as, just progress. But the reality is, even to the best of us, we fall back, right? What do when we fall back and, fall back a few steps, maybe 3, maybe 10? The first thing we do is shame ourselves. And that's the first thing you got to cut out. Like, you cannot shame yourself, because when you shame yourself, let's say you took 3 steps back, you shame yourself, double it, 6. You shame yourself some more, double it, 12. Yeah. So that's what happens energetically. That's like the first thing we gotta shut down. I'm telling you because I am someone who is so hard on herself, which it's a beautiful thing to be, hard on yourself. Why? Because you expect a lot for yourself. You love yourself and you expect a lot for yourself. That's why you're hard on yourself. So I understand where that comes from, because I'm like that with myself. I have very high standards. I have very high expectations. So whenever I am not on track, whenever I fall back, I shame myself, because I'm like, damn, you could have done better. Or, it's that culture that tries to shame you into growth. There is no shaming into growth. Shame only magnifies more shame. Only makes you feel worse. You're just going downhill. It's an upward battle. Like you're not gonna make it if you keep doing that. And that's something I had to really learn, how to allow some more grace into myself, and the way I treat myself, to be more graceful. Because the thing is that it's natural. Life is like this, meaning this is gonna happen regardless, whether you like it or not. So how do we perceive one of those downhill moments from another perspective? We got to remind ourselves, hey, this is normal. This is part of the duality of life. So how am I going to perceive this problem, this obstacle, this setback in a way that will maybe launch me further, not set me more behind? Recently, there's certain things you can't control. I got a little sick. It's flu season. It happens, And I was trying so hard not to be upset at the fact that my progress was stopping a little bit. And sometimes when my momentum stalls, I kind of fall back into my old frequency. So I had to make the best of the setback. I had to look at it from a different perspective so it wouldn't truly set me back. Once you realize, awareness is everything, guys. Awareness is everything. Once you realize this setback happened, okay, there's nothing you could do anymore. So I need you to stop with the shame. Start with the gracefulness. What are we going to do from here on? What is the next step we're going to take to get ourselves out of this pit, out of this rut, out of this obstacle? I want you to remind yourselves that whenever you deal with a problem, when have you ever dealt with something and not figured it out first? Anything you've ever dealt with, you've always figured out. Any problem you've ever had, you've always found a solution. So when you find yourself struggling mentally, remind yourself, you've always found a solution. Always. That's a first. You look at the problem And you can't look at it as a problem. Any problem you have, you look at it as a solution. Okay, what is a solution? What are we going to figure out? And I'm telling you this as someone who overthinks a lot and actually gets a little frustrated. But we need a change in perspective. We're not going to find a solution in the frequency of a problem. We got to switch it up. We got to make a plan. One of the biggest things, and I think one of the biggest obstacles for people, is that they're just not organized. And that's a big thing I'm working on at this point in my life. Implementing routine, implementing structure. How do you pick yourself up again to where you were? You implement the structure that was keeping you in place. When you are progressing, you are doing things differently, in a more organized, in a more structured manner. Whatever you were doing before that kept you in this frequency, you need to hop back into. You just need to start the momentum. Something I learned recently is that everything in this life is about momentum. And we're either in the momentum of a negative energy or in the momentum of a positive energy, of a negative or a positive feeling, right? Because I was also listening to Abraham Hicks' teachings recently. She said this one thing that really stuck with me. She's like, how do you know you're on track? Or how do you know you're on the journey of the higher version of you, or on the journey to where you want to go or where you want to be, or of your goals? She said, due to how you're feeling. That tells you everything. Even if it's not physically here, how you're feeling will tell you everything you need to know. You need to get out of that negative momentum and get into that positive momentum, into that energy of progress. But I will say that when you get set back and you're hopping back into that other timeline, into the higher frequency timeline, there's going to be a little bit of resistance, because the negative momentum has already, it got a little bit of energy. There's a little momentum, and then you got to stop the ball from rolling and start going the opposite way. When you start going the opposite way, the wind's going to hit you a little bit. But you need to keep going. And the moment you catch some momentum, being this healthier version of you, or more productive, or more fitter, or whatever it is you're working on, the moment you get momentum and you get the ball rolling back in the right court, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. It's not going to be as hard. The resistance is only in the beginning, when you're getting back into alignment. Recently, not only did I get sick, but the past few months, I hopped into alignment. I decided who I wanted to be, and then I fell off so quick and was facing resistance. One of the biggest things, that's why I mentioned it here. I was just shaming myself so hard for not being able to get it right. That already threw everything off, because you cannot hate yourself into change. You can only love yourself into evolution. So that's a first. But then only as of recent, I was like, okay, I need to be a little more graceful with myself. The moment I started being more graceful, I noticed that my habits were slowly developing. Another thing I think a lot of people do is that when you fall off of alignment, when you fall off the frequency of progress, or off your progress, you struggle a little getting back into frequency. It's like this, like, back and forth, like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and until you snap into it, right? It's the resistance of the change. And a lot of things can make the change the transition a little worse. And you can't look at life from the perspective of who you currently are. You always have to look at life from the perspective of the highest version of you. The person that has it, the person who has the progress, the person who's already 2-3 steps ahead. That's how you start. You have to think of life right now the way that person would. You're like, oh, how can I do that when I haven't even gotten there? What would a person that's 2-3 steps ahead do right now? Give you advice. What advice would a higher version of you give you? And you got to think about it. And you got to act that way. Because in order to get somewhere different, you got to think differently. The same thing that's gotten you here is not going to get you to the next level. And I will always say that. So when you're hopping back into alignment, you need to realize that things are not just going to... Yes, perspective shifts are that powerful. But you need to have grace with yourself. And you need to allow things to flow. That's the key word I'm looking for. Allow things to flow, because there will be a little resistance at first. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day or evening. Don't worry, you'll be right back on track, because as long as you stay focused, it will always work out. Everything is always working out for you, even your setbacks. You don't realize, but it's almost like, when they pull you back a little bit so you can go even further. That's what it is. Bye.